Uh, all right, there we go. We're all set up. So we will officially begin. We have Stephen here, Stephen Bluestein from Gemba. So one of the co-founders of Gemba. And I believe, Stephen, you're going to help us tonight with some product development discussions. We can do Q&A. Anything else to discuss? I see Anand's in here, Carrie, Debbie, Emmy, good to see you again, Kelvin, Jareth again, Rachel. Yeah, Debbie says, welcome, Stephen. Yeah, Debbie, great to have you aboard with us as well, too. So yeah, with that, Stephen, I'd love to hand it over to you.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, thanks so much for having me, Jamie. I appreciate it very much. Enjoy as well. So tonight I'll talk to you a little bit about product development, different stages of product development, what we need to do, and some things to help you protect yourselves, especially if you're going abroad. I had a call today with a gentleman. He called me and asked me, he has an idea for something that's going to help him with side sleeping. And I get sleeping products a lot, actually. And there's been a lot to hit the market. So I'll kind of use that as an example for my discussion tonight, and a little bit about what his questions were for somebody that's, been high up in the sales community for a long time. I think he spent over 10 years at Salesforce and, has a lot of experience in selling and now wanted to create a product on his own. And so some of the things that he thinks about, or the things that we think about when we're thinking about product development, and then also when we're thinking about protecting yourself when you go into that phase. So before I start, a little bit about myself, my background. First, I started a pet product company called Pride Bites. Pride Bites got on the show Shark Tank. Quickly afterwards, we scaled pretty quickly into about 3,000 retail stores. And today, they ship about 360,000 unique products to retail stores every month. After that, and going through that experience, what led me to start Gemba was just everything I went through to create a product, create my company, launch thousands of products, really all stemmed from the fact of, trying it out on my own and trying to figure it out on my own and going through those experiences on my own. I went over to China for quite some time, had to learn the language to manage my teams, and really go through the school of hard knocks on product creation itself. And so quickly afterwards, I started the company Gemba. And Gemba is really the first product concept marketplace. You can visit us at brand.gemba.com to learn more about what we're doing on the product development side that will really speed things up. And I'll go into that later on in our presentation as well. But at Gemba, we really help people create and launch new products. And all part of that is a part of a journey. And I think that's one of the first things that I'll leave you today with a tidbit is just that you really need a plan. You can't go into product development without a plan, or you're just going to run astray. And that's going to lead to a lot more time and cost at the end of the day for you. That's really unwanted and unnecessary. And so what's really important is that you develop a set plan and stick to that plan. So holding yourself accountable, holding those around you accountable, especially who you're working with in order to get your product created. So typically the first step of the journey is ideation. And what we think about during ideation is really trying to pull out everything you can about thinking about a new product. So it's all the goods, all the bads, all the things that you think that can be worked on, anything futuristic that you're thinking about, really just get it out onto a piece of paper and get it out in front of you. List off all those things kind of in an orderly fashion so you can kind of look those over and to really think through kind of what product that you want to create. Is it based on a specific industry? Is it based on a specific product that's missing things, right? And go ahead and write all the things down that are just in your head, just a true brainstorm. And oftentimes I like to do this so that I kind of feel like it's a connect the dots. It's looking to see what ideas that you've written down can align and correlate with one another. And once you see them juxtaposed on a page, it oftentimes allows you to hone in on specific functions that you're thinking about in product development, whether it's a cost function or a value function, or something that's even non-existent on the market, that you really feel like you're solving a tremendous problem. I think all those things are the first place you start, which is through ideation. After ideation, we think about concepting. This is kind of the initial form of getting your idea onto paper. Oftentimes, I think it's great to work with a designer to do this. An industrial designer at this point is all that you would need. and to go back and forth with that industrial designer to understand really the different elements and facets of the product, maybe size, maybe materials, maybe complexity that you're going through, how the different functions of the product interact. Another thing we like to think about, are there no moving parts? Does it have moving parts? Does it have electronics? All these things are critical in the thinking before you start your journey in the concepting stage. Also in the concepting stage, you'll start to see things kind of unravel and get them onto paper. So you really see starting your idea come to life. And it's really fun to like finally have this idea that you've had in your head for so long and start kind of working its way from the back of the napkin onto really kind of a digital format, so you can start seeing that product come to life. And I think, part of the concepting phase is to ask a lot of questions, challenge the way things work, challenge what you can get away with, challenge what's acceptable within the norms of the product function as it is at the current moment. Because that's what's going to allow you to have kind of your best work and feel in terms of that item. Specifically, I was talking to this gentleman today, and he was telling me about all the different items that are now on the market for sleeping. And especially if you're a side sleeper. Back, I think 10 years back, if you were a side sleeper, they tell you to rotate your pillow. But now today, actually, they even have mattresses that they've dug out kind of a hole where your headrest is that allows you to kind of sink your arm in and better sleep on your side. So there's really a lot of things that are coming out to fulfill a need and to fill a specific function that doesn't exist, or a problem that exists in the market. And so in terms of the concepting phase by it, what I told the gentleman today is, go through your ideation where you're, like I said, writing everything out on the page and really trying to understand really what you want to pack into the item. And then see if you can pack all those functions into that concept, right? I think a good industrial designer can kind of walk you through the different elements to say, hey, if it's a soft good item, what things do you have to think about, right? Is it durability? Is it rigidness? Is it touch and feel? Kind of what the focus is of that product. If it's a hard good product where it's something that's going to be injection molded, oftentimes we think about the texture of the product, or how large it is, or the pliability of the specific material. And so all those things I think are really good to kind of work out in the concepting phase and to see more than one concept. Yeah, let me see if I can get some presentation live for you all so you can see and go through what I'm looking at as well. Grab something for you. One second here. Almost there. My pillow is an excellent one, I think, in terms of filling the needs in the marketplace for sure, and really understanding kind of how it works in terms of finding a product offering that doesn't exist. I think, he just really worked a product and made it incredibly functional and useful in terms of the marketplace, and then with great service, right? So I think that's another element that I think we can incorporate into how a product is created as well in the development of the product. Let me share my screen with you real quick. Awesome. So I'll jump right in terms of kind of common challenges or common problems as I'm talking through them right now, and different options for how we see things in product development. But I'll break it into kind of two functions when it comes. I know I was kind of jumping into concepting, and I'll back up a second and talk through kind of just common problems to begin with. And I think with new products, what we think about is how do I know if my product is feasible? That we'll be talking about in terms of ideation and concepting. How do I de-risk my supply chain? So where are common risks that happen within a supply chain when I go and create my products? How much will a product cost? We often hear that at the very beginning, like, I really want to understand like how much I have to invest in an item or a product. How will I do that? And then overall, how much do I have to invest or how much do I have to spend in the entire journey other than just the cost? Are there other things that are going to pop up? What about compliance? What about things that have to do with packaging? And then anything that is related to like getting the product onto the shelf. On the other side of it is if it's an existing product, how do I find a new supplier? We hear that often, whether it's, how do I find a supplier outside of China or how do I find a supplier within India? Those are things that have come up quite often these days. How do I develop my product line? So I have one product I've done really well. I have MyPillow. How do I get multiple products in my line that can do as well as that? How do I get a tech pack made? So what do I need to hand to the factory when I'm going to produce the item? Or what is kind of the blueprint for my idea in general? And then how do I find experienced staff to help me in this journey overall? So I think those are some of the things that we experience in terms of common problems every single day within product development. So 3 routes that you can take in terms of the product development lifecycle. Number 1 is modifying the existing product. So that would be taking a product that currently exists, understanding kind of the attributes of the product and adjusting those attributes to make it more uniquely yours, or what we call kind of a design to manufacturing journey here at Gemba. And oftentimes what we do is, using the tools such as Helium 10 or Zonguru or the other tools that are out there available to do research and determine really where there's availability in terms of modifications of the product. What do people like or not like about the product, qualitative and quantitative, I think is extremely important. And to go ahead and really identify those, again, into your ideation phase and really pull those out to list them in terms of what you want to recognize in a product in terms of modifying it. Option 2 that we think about is a completely unique product. This would be a product that has never before been existed on the market, something that is almost like developing an iPhone, right? So to the extent that it never was available in the market and that no one had seen it before. When the iPhone came out, it really was, mind-boggling in terms of what people could create. So same kind of thing. So if you recognize that your product is not just like a Yeti tumbler that you see, kind of like every day on the shelf, and it's something that's completely unique that you never see, this would be the best option for you. And then finally, in terms of your third option, we often say, it's always best to improve or update your current products. I think oftentimes people just think about one product journey, but what we think about in terms of like developing a brand or having a lot of products in your line is to always like keep that fresh and to constantly evolve that product into version 1, version 2, version 3. So oftentimes what we suggest is that don't get too stuck on your first product, but really engage that product. And so you can come up with kind of your plan or your strategy to launch many products within that line and many updates of that product line in order to keep things fresh with your client base. In terms of going direct to factories in terms of new product development, the other side of it is working on something that you already have, and the options in terms of supply chain for adjusting that new product and going right direct is also available to you if you've already gotten through the design phase of product development. In that case, like if you're already through that and you already have your concepts developed, whether it's engineering files or your industrial designs, you can go directly to factory if you're ready to reach that point. 3 options that we think about in this phase, which is find a factory for a new product, find a factory for an existing product, or diversify your current supply chain, are 3 options that work really well in terms of developing out things with your current products. And so when finding a factory and finding a new product, I think it's really important to think about the capabilities of the factory and to determine how those align with the product that you want to create. and how willing they are to develop that product that you're looking for. If you're finding for a factory for an existing product, it's really to get a better cost structure, get a better time structure, really work on all the core functions that you have within your existing supply chain and how to improve on those. And of course, your option 3 is once you're kind of set within your structure and you already have your supply chain set up is never get complacent. Always be thinking about other options and how you can de-risk things as you're developing your product. Within Gemba, we have a ton of experts, a ton of factories a part of our network. And oftentimes people ask me is like how to find the right one. And from my perspective, it's either using a group that can help you identify those and can like a matchmaking service similar to what we do here at Gemba. But the other part of it is just really getting out there and meeting a lot of people, finding what works for you or doesn't work for you, depending on what type of personality you have. You want somebody that's either going to either hold your hand through the process or allow you to kind of be the captain of your own ship. That's really important when it comes to design, and even a factory partner that works well with you. We hear a lot of people that want to come up with the idea and kind of pass it off from that point. In that case, you want people and teams that are really hands-on for you, which I think is excellent when it comes to someone that's really involved in a lot of things and somebody that has a lot of products that they're looking to launch. In the case of the factory level and finding kind of the perfect factory for you, I think you have to understand like where you want to produce, how fast it's going to take, what costs you have in mind. I think there was a big surge after COVID of people wanting to produce in Central and South America. But depending on the product, I think it's not realistic for a lot of products out there to go to those locations. So I think it's really important to identify like where you want to produce based on what you're looking out of that factory partner. So time, quality, scale, et cetera, are all things to think about when you're going to develop a new factory partner. So going through kind of our tried and true process, let me back up a second into the options here and different products. From our perspective of going now, after you're going through the concepting phase, and you've identified a lot of these common problems, it's now working with an engineer to get your all your ideas onto paper or build that tech pack that you need in order to hand that product off to a factory. In that case, I think it's really important to get as detailed as you can. A lot of times we see that the communication with the factory is left to chance, meaning I send over something to the factory and the factory makes me a sample and I'm waiting till I get the sample back in order to give my feedback for the next round of samples to happen. In this phase of, once you get through concepting and when you get into the engineering phases to develop a tech pack, this is where you really have an understanding of really the product journey overall. And so this is where you can really decide in terms of what to pack in, what features to pack in, and what's going to be best for the factory to be able to work on. And the way the factory is able to figure that out is if you give them detailed plans. If you don't have that and you're going direct to the factory in order to help you, oftentimes that can muddle things or provide for a sample that comes out that's not exactly what you're expecting. And so in that, I think that's really, really important for you to dial this part of your journey in order to best fit the needs of a factory in that sense. In our case, I think from Gemba's perspective, you should always try to have a tech pack to go in the factory. You can imagine like if I show up to a factory and have nothing, what they think of me in terms of my professionalism, if I'm not going to provide them anything or a roadmap for them to make my product. So we see a lot of people have issues in that case during this part of the journey. After the engineering part or developing the tech pack, the step between having your design finished and then going to the factory is called design for manufacturing. There's a lot of times when you're developing a product that you start off by creating the product and then working with one group as a design group, and then you leave that group and then you go find a factory, however means necessary. And then you're struggling kind of getting your idea across to that factory. And having your designers work directly with the factory I think is extremely important in order for you to create a better functioning product and really cut down the amount of costs that you're going to be spending, because you'll be reducing the time that it takes to go through several iterations to finalize that product. So this phase is really integral, I think, to product development. So whoever you work with, whether it's a design group or Gemba or any other group that can help you with product development, the question I would ask them is, what do you do for design for manufacturing? What are the steps that you take? What's involved in that process? Do your designers actually speak to the factory and work directly with the factory? Or is this something that I kind of, you as the brand owner or the product inventor kind of sits in the middle and has to work between the designers and the factory? We strongly believe that you should allow the designer to work directly with your factory to increase transparency, and that your outcome of your product will be much better in that case, if in fact you have those who are professionals working together to streamline that process. After you go through sampling, the next phase, after you go through DFM, design for manufacturing, the next phase in that journey is going to be, and I have this written up here so I can kind of transfer over real quick. See. Cool. So the next phase of where you're at after you leave the design phase. So we talked about ideation and research. We talked about concepting. We talked about designing your product, working with engineers, et cetera, in the DFM phase. And now we're talking about sourcing. So now that you've left the design for manufacturing process, it's really integral, I think, to find the right factory that's good for you. As I said before, it's not always the biggest factory that's the best factory. In my first business, we have 17 different factories that we work with, 6 of which we produce about 95% of the items in that factory. And at the very beginning, you don't have any leverage, right? When you're going with a product with a new factory, but you want to find the right partner who's going to put the time and energy into your product journey, so that you feel that you have really strong service. I think in that sense, that's a good factory partner. Those that are willing to put the time in to get you where you need to be, specifically on your first journey, so that you can really hit the ground running when you get your final product. There's a lot of different things, but I would say start with communication. That would be the first thing that comes to mind. Factories these days obviously know that they're working with a world economy, and that brands are coming to them from all different locations. So they should be able to communicate with you however you want, right? If you're going to be using WeChat, that's great. If you're going to be using WhatsApp, that's great. If it's email, whatever that function is, whatever the language is, you really want to find a partner who's willing to adapt to you in order to help you get through this journey in a more smooth process. And that's where it would be in the sourcing element too. Again, don't go with just the first factory that you meet, but really find a factory that has experience within your realm, at least within the capabilities of what the factory has to offer, or any other products that are similar to your product line specifically. So if I'm making baby swaddle, right, I want to go to a factory that makes baby garments. Doesn't necessarily have to have tons of experience with baby swaddles specifically. That would be a plus, but baby garments would be something that I would want to seek out, or baby soft goods would be something I would want to seek out. So oftentimes that's really helpful, especially leaving the DFM review and the design for manufacturing review, that you can go to a factory that can help you kind of work through the complexities of the initial delivering of really the concept of the idea to the factory, in order to help you with that roadmap or whatever it's going to take to make that item. Also, part of the sourcing journey is sampling. I think this is probably the number one place people get held up the most. And the most miscommunications happen between the factory and a brand, mainly because the first sample that's going to come out of the factory is really going to really kind of size up what it takes for the factory to make your product. So oftentimes people think that, okay, if I deliver a my concept. I've worked so hard on it. I've gone through the ideation phases. I've gone through concepting. I've gone through design. I've my final tech pack. It's my roadmap for my journey. I've gone through DFM now, found my factory, that the factory should be able on the first attempt, just make my sample. Well, that's hardly the case, actually. We often say that it takes about 3 different iterations in order for somebody to reach the perfect sample. Again, first one is for the factory to get a feel for what the item is. The second one gets you closer. It allows them to kind of hone in on some of the finer details that are involved with the item. And typically on the third try what we call it as the golden sample is able to be produced. So if you're going far past 3 attempts, then that's something to consider. And I would look through other options at the factory, unless they're like things that you can clearly understand why it's happening. But really after the third attempt, we expect that you will reach your golden sample. And the golden sample is that sample that you sign off on, the factory signs off on, and your, whatever other team that's helping you, if there's another team that's helping you, they sign off on as well, whoever's managing your item in that case. For you to be able to say, like, when I go to production, I want every part of production to match this item as it comes off the line. And that's the production line. So after you get through sampling, that process is what we've seen typically takes about 2 months. It's not uncommon for it to go a little bit longer, so around 3 months, because oftentimes each iteration of the sample takes anywhere from like 2 to 3 weeks, depending on the item. If it's electromechanical, something that you're working on that has electronics, typically that process is going to take much longer as well. So leaving the source phase, we're now where you're, aligned with the factory, you have samples that have come out, and it's time to start production. I would then pay a little bit closer attention as you reach into production. Let me tell you why. A lot of shortcuts happen at this point with your factory partners. If there are going to be shortcuts taken by the factory, it's the transition from sampling into production. Oftentimes what we say is you want to check like what materials are on hand, what you've negotiated through this time, what you've said is what's going to be a part of that final product. Check it up front. Oftentimes we see that this is an area where factories can cut corners or reduce their cost if they use something that's a similar product. Because by the time that you get to it, if you don't have people checking on your production, it oftentimes you're stuck with a situation where like, okay, I'll do this for version 1. And you're kind of giving in a little bit at that case. If you do your homework up front and you check really at the beginning of production and make sure that materials that you think should be purchased are what's on hand, it will help you reduce a lot of anxiety down the road, or a lot of issues that you'll have if your item comes back bad. One of my first ever products on the pet side, I was doing an order for the Houston Astros. We were the Bark at the Park giveaway. And I checked the final sample, but didn't go do my homework on terms of making sure that everything that was on hand was in fact what we had discussed. And let alone, I'm sitting at my warehouse and in comes the samples, or in comes the product that's supposed to be delivered to the Houston Astros in the same week. And all the threading was purple threading, which would be good in some cases, but in this case, absolutely not, and would have been rejected literally on the spot. And of course, I was upset or angry at my factory partner, but really I'm to blame, I think, in that case, because I didn't do my due diligence to make sure that what materials were on hand were in fact what I discussed at the beginning. So a little example on why that's so important. So typically most production takes, anywhere from 45 to 60 days. Again, if you have more complex production, using multiple factories, using multiple regions, et cetera, this will take a lot more. But on average, we see that it takes about 45 to 60 days. We like to do the check at the beginning. I was telling you about the BOM, checking the BOM. That's the bill of materials. We also like to check in the middle. I think that's key because oftentimes production is long. And you don't know what your factory is doing or what else they're working on if you're not there. So oftentimes we say, like, go in at the middle of the production time and pull things off the line so that you can really understand and what I describe as passing the scratch and sniff test, right? Making sure that you don't see a ton of finished product yet. You may see a couple finished product, but really understanding kind of what's coming off the line. So you feel better about when it ends production that the product that you receive is going to be what you expect. And so going through there, you can use a variety of services. Obviously, Gemba provides QC services and production management services if you're looking for that. There's also other people in the space as well that you can go and have people show up at your factory. We strongly recommend this. We think that really helps hold the factory accountable so that when you finish production, you're expecting what they're expecting. So finally, at the end of production, we're really on the edge here right before we get to logistics. We go through and do a final QC. I think it's really important to take tons of pictures and videos and to really red tape any marks that you're in dispute of or think that there's some inconsistencies with the production. This is a good time to be able to really earn some extra value here if there's any mistakes, to lower your costs down the road, or in fact, just go ahead and really solidify that strong relationship with your factory partner by really understanding and committing to the fact that they did a great job with production, and you're really pleased with how things are in advance before you would go to logistics. But really important that you get pictures and videos of that product, that final product, even samples that can send you physical products so you can check out the product on hand. All those things are things we recommend in order to make sure that we ensure from when you pass out of production, you're passing out of production. So your product's finished and the factory is kind of releasing liability at that point to you, especially when it leaves the factory and onto logistics. And that's the last part of the journey is once you hit go on the QC, everything looks good, the product sample looks good. Now we're going to enter the logistics realm. Things you have to think about in terms of ocean or air freight, or even using DHL, all serve different functions, just depending on what time you need the product by. But in point in case is just understanding really what to expect and the timing of the product and when it hits the warehouse, so you know when your availability to sell is. I think in terms of timing and how costs have worked now, ocean freight has definitely come down a lot, and so has air freight. What we saw actually is that the DHL cost rose pretty drastically to start the year. So we've seen a lot of people shift their supply chains towards air freight or ocean freight, depending on really what the call of your product is or how fast you need that product. So overall, the product development journey has a lot of steps in it. We try to condense it to what I explained to you today, which is ideation, concepting, design, sourcing, production, and logistics. There's a lot of things that we think about in terms of new products that I talked to you about from the beginning, which is all about like how feasible it is, how I de-risk myself, et cetera, how much will it cost? These are all things that you can develop as the journey goes, as you go through your journey. And a lot of things that you can answer in the pre-planning phases, as I described at the beginning. You don't want to go into anything not having a direct plan, not having kind of timelines involved. If so, you won't hold people accountable and you'll start seeing that your costs will get out of hand in that case. So we always like to do that as well in that notion. The last thing I'll leave you with is just ongoing product development and how important it is. I think oftentimes we see people just create one product, but not think through the entire product line or even, version 2, version 3, as I suggested. We worked with an awesome client in the past called Blue Tees Golf. And the one thing that I have a lot of respect for, they were making rangefinders. What we helped them on was a Bluetooth speaker. And I always had a lot of respect for the fact that they came out with these really detailed timelines of their product development journeys, 4 or 5 year plans about what they think will be coming out in the future. And they often work together to adjust those plans as they're moving forward. And we strongly suggest that at Gemba, because I think it allows you to better think through what you need in the very beginning stages for V1 versus what the outcome should be as you think down the road. There's a lot of great companies that have done this really well. But I think they're one, if you wanted to look at how their product development roadmap plays out, Blue Tees Golf does that in an excellent way. So overall, I think, product development journey can definitely be challenging. Again, spend the time on the ideation part at the very beginning, working out kind of what details you want of the product. make sure you have that DFM locked down, that design for manufacturing, whether it's a design firm or you're paying for the extra hours in that design firm to work with your factory, or use a group like Gemba that has it all together in one place. I strongly recommend that you don't skimp on this part of product development. It's super, super important to get it right with the factory, with competent professionals helping you kind of get to that point. Next is the sampling element of things. Your first sample, you're not going to get what you expect. So kind of get that into your head. I think that will help you be able to be flexible and understanding of the process as you get through it. Also will help you to be a better partner for your factory. Since they have a lot of details to work out with a product, especially a new one, super important to allow them to get through the sampling phase so that they really understand what it's going to take to make that product. In production, the bill of materials, ensuring that the bill of materials is exactly what you're going to expect to receive, and everything that you negotiated pre-production. Super important to make sure that that's locked in. QCs and the QC checkpoint in the middle, the scratch and sniff test to ensure that really the product is going the way that you expect it to go. And then finally, the route of logistics. I think, choosing which would be better suited for you based on your product and the timeliness that you need to deliver into your warehouse. So those are the main points of what we think about with product development and what we go through every day here at Gemba. Something that's pretty cool that we just launched that I think is pretty interesting. If you go to brand.gemba.com, and I'll drop it in the chat a little bit later, we've really worked something that we believe has cut down the product development cycle drastically. If you come to brand.gemba.com, you'll see a bunch of products that you can start reserving right now. And these are all product concepts that have never before been on the marketplace, that will really reduce the time and effort it takes you to launch products by over 50%. We've seen really the biggest holdup, as I described, is going into sampling. And this allows you really to kind of speed through that process and allows you to go directly into a product concept that you like, that's backed by great consumer data and a factory that has the ability to make the product. So I think that's really key, is not just seeing a product concept that you can make, but having that factory behind it that can provide the unit economics and the willingness to make the product. So something that's really exciting, that's new at Gemba, and hope if you like, just go to brand.gemba.com. You're welcome to go ahead and play around with it. Really exciting stuff.
Very cool. Very cool. Let us know any, Debbie says that's very encouraging. Cool. Well, we have Steven here too. Let me know any questions. Grace has questions around what your guys' structure is and I guess what's your process if people reach out.
Yeah, so Gemba, kind of the white label service I was just describing, kind of going through the full product development journey, is we pay on a monthly fee structure. So it's just fee for service. And we don't take anything in terms of your percentage of your purchase orders or anything after the fact. We just amortize that over the course of working with us. So we can provide a better service to you all. We do quality control, quite a bit of it from our side. We have offices, and 2 different offices in China, one north and one south, Vietnam, India, Mexico, South America, all places that we can go and do quality control if you need it as well.
Questions, Debbie?
Debbie, good question. I was just about to ask that about the, so like we have NDAs in the US, but how do you protect yourself?
Yeah, so a lot of places internationally, they also have NDAs. In China, they work with NNN agreements, which is very similar to an NDA. Something else that I'll suggest is that if you're going to work in China and you're worried about theft or IP issues, a very common thing to do is file a design patent nearly immediately. It's not very expensive, less than $1,000, and allows you to have the first right to that product idea in their market. So that would often prevent a factory from wanting to produce that item because they don't have the ability to protect themselves either. So NNN agreements really have to be enforced by somebody who has a Chinese entity in that case. In other places, international law, we use a Singapore entity to protect ourselves and using NDAs within those environments. So within India or Vietnam, et cetera. I think, but yes, absolutely. The factory should be willing to sign confidentiality agreements. And in terms of working with factories, I often tell people that specifically in the China market, oftentimes factories are looking to knock something off. So if it never before has existed in the marketplace, typically the factories aren't trying to like take that idea because it hasn't proven itself yet. Now, I'm not going to say that, and then you go to a factory and you spill everything you got into the factory, and the next thing you know, you're seeing it everywhere. We've seen those cases, and those are very unfortunate cases. But I think it's about working with a group that you can trust, working with factories that are vetted. I think that's like a really key element to things. And then using the documentation that you need to make sure that the factory understands that it's not your first rodeo, right? That you're not going to go in and just hand everything over to them and know that you're not even thinking about it. So the way you hold yourself, I think, is the way that you're treated. And in that case, with NDAs, we strongly encourage you to sign NDAs with your development firms and also with your factories.
Yeah, that's a good point. I was worried about that when I was selling, but then I was ordering so much from my supplier. I was like, this would really hurt them if I decided to find somebody else. So I got more confidence. And plus, if you're in this program, you're going to be able to outsell anybody. So don't worry about it.
Agreed. Excellent advice. Yeah, I think, factory dependency, once you start producing a lot with the factory, they don't want to let that go. Specifically if you're, times where people can't travel to factories, I think that's also something that's a key component of that.
Yeah, that's a good point too.
So you see Chad's question there?
Yeah, that's a good question. So depending on the product, if you have a injection molded product that has multiple sizes, sometimes you can build it in the same cavity. It really depends on how big the item is. That's something to really think about in terms of making your item, or how many panels you have to use, or how many different molds you're using. If it's something that has multiple sizes, and you may be better off having kind of a sectioned approach to your product, depending on what it is. We've seen somebody come through just recently who had an injection molded item, a plastic item, had a lot of different sizes, was looking to cut back on cost. There's some things that you can do with silicone molding as well, so temporary molding that can kind of help you in that sense. But I would think through it for sure on that item to see like how the different ways in concepting and while you're creating your tech back can you use in order to reduce the amount of molds that you're working with. Obviously, molds are expensive. They also take a long time. And if you're tooling multiple molds, texture is really important. And so oftentimes when you make a mold, the texture is going to be the look and the feel of the material as it leaves the mold after you produce an item. And so if you're doing multiple sizes, sometimes that texturing can be a little bit off, depending on what your product is. So we always ask for kind of like sample panels. Injection molded factory can send you panels of different materials, how the feel and touch is going to be after the product is made, which can also cut down on the amount of time that it takes you to go ahead and make that item. So it's kind of hard when you make an injection molded item that has many sizes, because it does tailor a lot of cost. But oftentimes, if you can ask them to make it within one cavity, sometimes that can help as well. Multiple cavities within one mold, that can help as well. Really anywhere that makes injection molding, they can make a temporary a kind of a silicone mold for you. It's typically an option. They may not suggest that at the very beginning because they're wanting you to go and produce a mold because it's revenue for them. But most places that if you go and you make a plastic item can make silicone molding. Oftentimes also they use CNC machines. So they're taking like a big chunk of plastic and they're dwindling it down to the physical product that's there by running it through a CNC machine. That's something else that you can do. It doesn't exactly give you the best form fit of the product, but it will give you pretty close to that if you're looking to sample out how big or small something is before you go into making a mold. That's often things that you can do in order to reduce those costs or time that it takes to make those molds as well. It's definitely a great question.
So MES. So how does one secure your QC services for a product?
Yeah, so you can get in touch with us at gemba.com and feel free to fill out the form on the website. And then one of our sales team members will get back to you pretty quickly, hopefully really fast. And they will, you can go ahead and ask them about our QC services. They'll have to ask you, location, what factory, et cetera, what's your product being made. So they'll have you sign an NDA at the beginning as well. Yeah, we have QC services in all the countries that we're currently operating in at the moment. Great questions. Yeah, so brand.gemba.com is the way that it functions is actually we use an AI tool to grab a ton of consumer data that's out on the web. So not just Amazon data, but really just overall market data. And really what we're looking at is qualitative and quantitative data. And then what we do is we feed that data to our design network, almost like a restaurant ticket that like hits the window. And then the designer is taking that and designing concepts that have never before been seen on the market. It's really quite unique. And as soon as the products hit the brand side of this website, we also have a counter site that's factory.gemba.com. And our factory partners are on that site. And when a concept shows up on the factory side, they provide the unit economics and the willingness to make the product. And then it becomes available for you to reserve on the brand side. So if you click into an item that says reserve on brand.gemba.com, all of it, you'll see the unit economics and really the background of the product for you to get matched up with the factory. So as soon as you reserve the product, you drop right into the Gemba app and you would speak right to the factory and be able to start sampling. So it really speeds up product developments by over 50% and reduces the cost pretty drastically. For $500, you can reserve any concept on the site, which is a completely new development for the industry in general. So all of it is backed by the consumer data and can be requested after we reserve a product.
Cool. All right. Well, good stuff, Stephen. I think definitely appreciate you coming on, and yeah, a lot of good info here. Again, reach out if you guys are looking to have more discussions around it and help. And yeah, we'll have you back on again too to share some more updates. Joey, any other thoughts there?
No, this is really good information. Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much. Appreciate you all. We know that when you all work with our customers, they come in better suited and better prepared to take the product development journey. So we really appreciate you all and all the help that you give us as well.
Awesome. All right, everyone. Hopefully you got a lot of good info there and some really great questions there too. So yes, Debbie says a great rest of your day. Absolutely. Everyone have a great week. And all of our coaching clients reach out via Voxer as need be. And awesome. All right. Awesome, Stephen. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much.
Good
Take care.
night.